What is going on, YouTube Nation and fantasy football players out there everywhere? It is the Week 11 preview edition of the Fantasy Football Stock Report. Chris Pearson here with you as always for your league, your team, your game, your home. You know where to go for your weekly fantasy football insight. First off, to get things started, again, I want to open and say that I'm sorry again that was not able to have a preview last week for Week 10. My work schedule was really crazy. It is getting crazy, of course, as the busy time of the retail season rolls around with the holiday coming up. So my schedule I just really had no off time that week to really prepare and have time to record at the same time. So that's why I was unable to do a show last week. So that's why that didn't happen. And I'm going to tell you right now, there are no guarantees for next week either, because as you guys probably are aware, next week is 1 week from today is Thanksgiving and Black Thursday for a lot of retailers, mine included. So, and I'm working like 11 hours that day. So, to get ample time in, let's put it this way: after the 21st, which is Monday, I work 8 days straight. So it's going to be very tricky for me to really have any off time to really prep, and then time to prepare for Week 12, and then there's time to record a show. So I'm going to at least make an effort, but no guarantees regarding a Week 12 preview, unless I find a way to even maybe post some matchup notes on Facebook like I do in the times that I usually don't do videos. I usually put up a Facebook note and I post it on my Twitter at Pearsonator, so that way you guys there as well. So if it comes to what I have for Week 12, like, don't put up a video. Otherwise, there's really just got to be a whole lot of time for me to do one for Week 12 because of that busy week. So, but we are here to try to get you a win in Week 11 this week. And it is now reaching the critical point of the season, making that push, making that late season, and again, no matter where you're at, if you're at the top of your league, you want to stay there. You want to keep being a strong team, and keep in that strong position while then getting through the season and then focusing on the playoffs. If you're a team kind of where I'm at, where still in the hunt, still a good record. I'm at 6-4 right now, and our team is in the hunt. We're only 2 games out of the wild card, and we're going to try to make that late season push. You want to keep pushing with the roster that you have. If there's guys on the wire though that can increase your team, you want to go after those guys as well. But you still want to work with the solid players that have gotten you to this point. And if you're sitting there at the dirges of your league, you're just you might not be able to be playoffs at this point, but at least you can try and play spoiler. At least you can again try to maybe wreak some havoc for the teams that are above you. So there's always something to play for when it comes to these weeks down the stretch in fantasy. And we're also at this point getting really near the end of the bye weeks. There's only now this week and Week 13 where the bye weeks are still going to be in play. So at this point, you're really going to have your full rosters going forward as we make that push toward the fantasy postseason. So this week, let's first talk about who you won't have this week in terms of the bye weeks. 4 teams on bye this week. That includes the Jets, which really isn't as big, but the other 3 are Denver, San Diego. Even though San Diego is struggling this year, they have plenty of fantasy playmakers on their roster, and Atlanta. Denver and Atlanta obviously being the biggest 2 because there are several playmakers for both of those teams. So you're gonna be missing a lot of notable names again this week. At quarterback, you're not going to have Trevor Siemian of Denver, even though he's been hit or miss this year. He has shown flashes this year of being very good. Phillip Rivers you're not going to have, or Matt Ryan. Rivers and Ryan being the 2 biggest names out of that bunch because, again, Ryan, of course, Atlanta can just put up points in bunches in any matchup they face. And San Diego, even when they're down, Rivers puts up a lot of impressive numbers when it comes to fantasy. So you're not going to have them this week. Running backs, 4 notable names you're not going to have. On all 4 of those teams, no Matt Forte, No Devontae Booker for Denver this week. No Melvin Gordon, one of the top running backs in the league, and no Devontae Freeman. So 4 really big names there running back you're going to have to find a replacement for this week. In terms of wide receivers, no Brandon Marshall for the Jets. No Broncos 1-2 combo of Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. Tyrell Williams, who's been breaking out for the Chargers when he's been healthy. You won't have him this week. And of course, no Double J, no Julio Jones. So, and then tight ends, a couple names you're not going to have. Virgil Green in Denver, Antonio Gates and Hunter Henry, the nice 1-2 combo there in San Diego, and Jacob Tamme, who occasionally finds the end zone in Atlanta. Not really a big fantasy factor, but occasionally will get some targets his way. So again, a lot of names you're not going to have this week, but there's still a lot of guys out there that you can really, I think, plug and play this week if they're available in your league on the wire. At this point of the season, the wire tends to get kind of dry because a lot of the good players at this point are already owned. So at this point, it really kind of becomes a guessing game as to who's going to break out potentially through the myriad of whether it's running backs or wide receivers that are left out there in the league, or you're trying to find that potentially elite tight end that'll break out. But there's still a lot of guys out there that could be used, and this week there's still a lot of good matchups. So we're going to go ahead and break those down for you this week. Starting obviously with tonight's game, Thursday night game, big NFC South game. Even though these two teams aren't really at the upper echelon of the NFC South, I mean, obviously Atlanta right now is the upper echelon of the NFC South. That's pretty much it. Atlanta's here, and everybody else is scrapping down here. You got New Orleans, Carolina, and Tampa Bay all scrapping down here. Well, tonight New Orleans and Carolina meet at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, and this is, when these two teams usually get together, it's usually a pretty entertaining game, regardless of the records. It's usually a very entertaining contest. The Saints sitting at 4-5, the Panthers 3-6. Has been the Panthers' struggles this year, and how this team is so different from the team that went to the Super Bowl, just a couple years ago or last year even. With the Denver game, and it was, and it's a number of things. Cam Newton, yes, is still there, and a lot of the talent on the offensive side is still there, but it's the defense that has really regressed this season for the Panthers, especially in the secondary. They let Josh Norman go in free agency. He's now in Washington, and they're kind of reaping that in a way because the secondary really has been the big struggle. For New Orleans, though, it's kind of the same thing. Great offense with Drew Brees under center and the talent they have there at wide receiver. But again, the defense gives up lots and lots of yardage and points and fantasy numbers. So I think this game tonight could potentially be a shootout-like game because, again, both these defenses have just been struggling all year. So this certainly could be a week where you're starting, I think, a lot of these guys in your fantasy matchup. So really there's not a whole lot that I don't like. The obvious guys for the Saints, obviously, are Drew Brees at quarterback and Brandon Cooks, Brees' number one wide receiver. Again, with the Panthers secondary not being as impressive as it has in the past, I think certainly Brandon Cooks is going to be a beneficiary of a lot of targets tonight from Drew Brees. And even though, again, the Saints, always their big question mark has been, they don't really play that well on the road. Well, while that may be true, they are starting, I think, to get better as the season goes on. They're starting to play better on the road. They might not still win or put up the big numbers usually you see at home, but they're starting to tend to really play a little bit better on the road, and it's starting to show in the fantasy performances of the Saints players in the road games. So I still think that Brees and Cooks will be okay to keep locked in your fantasy lineups. And for the Panthers, you know who the big four are. These guys are just sit them or just play them or set them and forget them guys in your lineup. You know that these guys are in there. Cam Newton at quarterback, Jonathan Stewart at running back, Kelvin Benjamin at wide receiver, and Greg Olsen at tight end. You know those guys are your guarantee guys. They usually don't let you down. Rarely, but you put them in there and just set it and forget it. The other guy, though, that I like, and especially after coming off of a tough week, is one of the guys that I have on my team, and that's Saints wide receiver Michael Thomas, the rookie out of Ohio State. He's not facing the Denver secondary tonight. And last week, if you played Michael Thomas, you shouldn't have. You really shouldn't have started any Saints wide receiver last week, but because they were playing Denver. And he did struggle, and it did show. He had his worst game of the season, only had 40+ yards, but also lost 2 fumbles. Now, normally a performance like that, that would earn you a trip to Sean Payton's doghouse, because Sean Payton really does usually not condone fumbling. Hi, Mark Ingram. Yeah, we've seen that with him and his, when Ingram fumbled a lot. But I don't see that here with Thomas. I think he's going to get the benefit of the doubt. I think he's we know he's a rookie, and that kind of those things can happen in your rookie year. So I think he's still going to be okay. I think I'm starting him this week in my league as a wide receiver 3. Kind of a tough call over Dante Moncrief, but again, I think it's strategy here for me, because one, I like the matchup better than Tennessee, because Tennessee's defense, as I've said on here many times, is stronger this year. And number 2, I think that I want to get an early jump on my opponent. My opponent this week is, and I blasted him on draft night during the draft show because he was just drafting Cowboys players. And that might be not a great thing now. It's Cowboys Nation. I'm playing him this week, Wesley. He's sitting at 7-3, and he does have a lot of I think he has like 5 Cowboys on his roster alone. He does not have Dak Prescott, though. I find that interesting. I think he had Romo originally, but then when Romo got hurt, I'm surprised he didn't get Prescott. But he has, I think he has Zeke Elliott. He has, I want to say, Bryant. He has Bailey, the kicker. He has the DST. He has Witten, but Witten's on his bench. He didn't even play Jason Witten at tight end. He plays Tyler Eifert. Which is interesting. But the point is, I want to really have a chance to get a jump on him now. And then once the Sunday games go through, I've also got 2 in the Monday night game. So I really want to, and who knows, he might, again, get a lot of points because the Cowboys are playing so well right now. But I want to get this early jump on him. So this is strategy, and this is, I think, better matchup is the way I'm seeing it with Michael Thomas. So for me, I think Michael Thomas is a high upside wide receiver 3 in this matchup at least. I think he's going to have a decent night. I like him a lot more than I do Willie Snead. Now, some might say, Willie Snead's still a good option tonight, and that might be the case. But I'm kind of seeing Willie Snead as kind of the odd man out. Sometimes in receiving core, there's always an odd man out. And right now, that's what I'm seeing in Willie Snead, because he's losing targets to Kobe Fleener, who is not a very good tight end, and to Brandon Coleman. I mean, for gosh sakes, Brandon Coleman. He's not even fantasy relevant at all. So that worries me. So for me, Snead is more of a risky wide receiver 4. I think you sit him. I don't like him here in this matchup. I would much prefer Thomas or Cooks than Willie Snead. The other sit in this game, though, is the Saints running backs. I honestly, speaking of the doghouse thing, I can't make heads or tails of this timeshare. I'm really confused by it. With Mark Ingram and Tim Hightower, you don't really know who's going to get the bulk of the work, because Hightower has shown that he can just as much carry the offense in the running game when Ingram was on the sideline bench because of his fumbling issues. So it's very much a split. It's very much a committee. If you're desperate, I think you can put out Ingram there as maybe a run as an RB3. Hightower is more of a what the heck RB3 or a flex play. I think really either is a risky play. I don't really prefer either guy as a start, but if you have to play one, play Ingram because you think he's going to get the bulk of the work. But you never know. You never know with Sean Payton because there's always that risk. So I don't like either as an elite option, but if you have to play one, play Ingram. I like him just slightly better than Tim Hightower. Okay, going now into the Sunday games. Let's start off with the Steelers at the Browns. Cleveland's maybe inevitable road to 0-16 continues. Even though the Browns players are saying we're not going 0-16, we'll believe it when we see it. Okay, because right now it's find me a win. Find me a win on Cleveland's roster at this point. I don't know or on Cleveland's schedule. I don't know if you can find it. I really don't know if you can. Especially I don't think it's going to be against Pittsburgh. Because Pittsburgh now, Big Ben is back healthy. He's got his weapons there with Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown, and the defense is still strong. Even though they just lost Cameron Hayward, that defense is still tough. I really don't see a way that Cleveland wins this game. I really don't, unless Pittsburgh lets them hang around. Even though they're at home, I really don't see and I put it here, blowout of the week question mark. It might be. Then again, or it could be a close game, which Cleveland's actually been in a couple close games this year. So it's going to be either a close game comes down to the wire, or it's going to be a blowout. That's really the way it's going to go. So your obvious starts in this matchup for the Steelers. Again, I mentioned the three guys that are obvious starts: Big Ben at quarterback, Le'Veon Bell at running back, Antonio Brown at wide receiver. You don't worry about those guys. You keep them in your lineup always. And I'm also going to say, again, the Steelers defense, because, again, it's Cleveland. And Cody Kessler is under center, and they're not going to put up a lot of stuff. You know that. So I'd say the Steelers defense is still a very fine play. For the Browns, really, there's only two guys that are notable. I think you can still play in this matchup. That, of course, is Isaiah Crowell, the reliable running back, and Terrell Pryor. They're pretty much do-everything guy, whether he's a wide receiver or an H-back or whatever Pryor's doing. Maybe even playing quarterback sometimes. Pryor is at least their weapon. So their weapon, dun, 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 so that he's kind of like that's pretty much one of their only weapons. So I think you can still go ahead with him as at least wide receiver 3 play in this matchup. Other than that, you're sitting the rest of the Browns guys. There's really no one else of note to mention as a start. I mean, the other wide receivers behind Antonio Brown are banged up and hit or miss, like Sammy Coates and Eli Rogers. They're banged up, hit or miss guys, so I really wouldn't worry about them. As for the sits, Cody Kessler. If Cody Kessler has become the Browns' best answer at quarterback, something is wrong. Well, that and the fact the Browns are 0-10. But, don't even try against this defense. Would not risk it. Corey Coleman, though, the Browns' wide receiver, he is expected to play coming off of that broken hand, but it's his first game back. Until we really see what he's going to do with Kessler under center, I don't think you can trust Corey Coleman yet. Maybe you scout him or you stash him to see what happens as a flyer if you've got an open roster spot at wide receiver to see what happens. But other than that right now, you really can't trust Corey Coleman. And again, I say this every week, Gary Barnidge at tight end is just not fantasy relevant unless he has Josh McCown under center. And right now that's not happening. So you cannot trust Gary Barnidge right now. The Ravens are at the Cowboys, and obviously, of course, the big story this week in Dallas and pretty much across the NFL is Tony Romo. And I first had, and I put this on Twitter as well, and I have to say it, Tony Romo, I applaud you. I respect you as a player, as a person. That press conference that Romo had probably was one of the best by any athlete in recent memory. I mean, my gosh, the fact that not only do you come out and say Dak Prescott has earned the right to be the Cowboys quarterback, which he has, but for him to say, to be humble, to be genuine, to say, I still want to play, I still want to start somewhere, and if you don't think I do, you're crazy. He didn't say those words, but he basically trying to convey. Because he said, if you don't know what it means to not play, and you don't understand how going out there and experiencing winning and losing on a weekly basis, Tony Romo has been so invested in being the Cowboys quarterback. He has literally put his body on the line to do that, and and going through all the injuries. And while sometimes on this show we have joked about it, we've laughed and ha-ha and said, when Tony Romo gets his inevitable injury. I said it in the preseason. I admit it. But we can joke about that all we want. But the honest truth is that for him to come out and then actually, resign himself to the fact, I'm going to be a backup for now, and respect the fact that Dak Prescott has taken this team to an 8-1 record, and in this league, that's hard to do. And he's right. Tony Romo did not say anything wrong in that press conference. If you have not seen the press conference in its entirety, I don't know if I'll link to it, but if you have not seen it, I'm sure it's on YouTube. Please watch it. It is by far one of the most fascinating athlete press conferences I've ever seen. I mean, and that's saying something. It is as I'm watching it, my eyes are just fixated to the screen. Like I cannot leave the screen. Like it was just absolutely. And at the end, I stood up and I applauded because he was right. He didn't say anything wrong. So salute to Tony Romo and letting this be Dak Prescott's team as it should be, because what he has done, along with Ezekiel Elliott and the offensive line and the defense, has been nothing short of outstanding. They are the major reasons why the Dallas Cowboys are 8-1 and the top team in the NFC right now. So I had to, that's been the story. I had to applaud Tony Romo for that. But going up against the Ravens, you're still starting a lot of the Cowboys guys doing this week. You're still, you're starting Dak Prescott. You're starting Ezekiel Elliott, who's just been tearing up the league. And again, I will be the first to admit I was wrong. I was wrong about Ezekiel Elliott. Hi, I'm wrong. I was worried. It may be over time getting more worried about rookies, because last year I drafted 3 rookies and they all turned out to be busts. So I was really, really leery about all the other fantasy journalists out there that were hyping up Ezekiel Elliott, and he said, "Oh yeah, he's gonna be the real deal. Don't worry about him. He's gonna be the real thing." And I'm like, he's a rookie. I mean, I understand that you might think he's going to be all great, but he's a rook. I mean, it is, but he's clearly not playing like a rook, and neither is Dak Prescott. And it's just blown my mind how impressive he has been. And I even think when Elliott tweeted out that he had the injury moment, the hamstring issue, or the thing with the domestic violence thing, I tweeted out, to all people who drafted first round pick on Ezekiel Elliott, oh well, I did. I tweeted that, but looking back on it, I guess I was wrong. I was wrong basically about Ezekiel Elliott. Most rookies are very risky draft picks in fantasy, but for all you, I guess, who did take a shot on Ezekiel Elliott, you are reaping the reward. So you start him. You start Dez Bryant. He's full. You keep bowling with Dez. Cole Beasley, I still think okay play, but more so in PPR leagues because of the targets he's getting. He's still a target machine. He might not do much with those targets, but he's still soaking them up. So Cole Beasley is still a good play in PPR, and of course that Cowboys defense. The Ravens offense really is not that impressive, especially not in the running game. They're going to try and force Joe Flacco to throw to the little weapons he has there. And really the only Raven you can trust is Steve Smith. I mean, Steve Smith just defies the odds. I mean, Steve Smith still somehow makes big plays, even at the age that he is. So he's really the only Raven that I trust in this matchup. But you play a lot of your Cowboys in this matchup. Speaking of Flacco, I really can't even rate him as a QB2 against the aggressive Cowboy defense, especially also on the road. I think, the Ravens and their team usually tend to play better at home than on the road, and I really can't trust him in this matchup. And the Ravens running back situation. Oh, this is another muddy one. Terrence West, we thought he was going to be the guy, but now is he going to keep the job or lose the job? We don't know. Kenneth Dixon, is he going to emerge or become concrete leg? We don't know. We don't know this situation. Plus, that Cowboys defense, it's pretty good. Avoid. Don't play a Ravens running back this week until we really see this situation sort itself out, because week by week by week, it's kind of like a stair step. Kenneth Dixon is eating into Terrence West touches. He's 4, and then 10, and then up and up and up and up, and until he's up and up and up until he's right in his face and say, "Hey Terrence, hi!" Here I am, Kenneth Dixon. You didn't think I was on my team, did you? Or you didn't think I was here, did you? Well, here I am. So until there's clarity in that situation, you cannot play Ravens running back. Now, I stashed Kenneth Dixon on my roster just in case to see what happens, to see if he breaks out and becomes the starting running back, and he might. He might at some point take that starting job from Terrence West, because here's the thing also about Kenneth Dixon. He's getting more involved in the passing game. Terrence West really is not a passing game back, and I remember this because I watched him play college at Towson, although I also watched Kenneth Dixon when he played at Louisiana Tech. Terrence West is a more north-south ground pound running back. He's a speedster, yes, but when he gets he's he's not very shifty. When he gets in the open field, he'll just go straight. He's not a very shifty back. Kenneth Dixon at least can go east-west, and he can get involved in those passing downs. And you know me, I like the dual threat back. So the dual threat third down back. So I'm keeping Kenneth Dixon as a stash for now. I'm not starting him yet, but I'm going to see what happens with the situation in Baltimore. If he breaks out in the end, it's a great pickup by me because now I got a quality RB2, RB1 potentially. So for now, keep the Ravens running backs on your bench, keep them stashed, keep them scouted, whatever, what have you, but you can't trust them in this matchup. Moving on now to a potential fantasy jackpot. You know, it might be. I'm not saying for certain that it will, but it's possible because you got the joke wars of Jacksonville and the Lions. You know, we know the joke wars defense sucks, and we know they suck in general. Remember, death, taxes, joke wars suck. You know, so ding, ding, ding. You know, check all the boxes. Vote here, you know, but no, we already did that, and look what happened. No, but then we're going up against the Lions, who have a decent defense, but we also need to remember the joke wars are the kings of garbage time. So there's potential here in this matchup for a lot of guys to put up good fantasy numbers. So there's really, again, not a whole lot of guys I really don't like in this matchup. Your obvious guys for Jacksonville, at least, Allen Robinson, the wide receiver, the number one wide receiver there, has at least broken out again and looked like a number one wide receiver again. He's played very, very well the last few weeks. I think he scored like in 3 of the last 4 games. So he's starting to become Blake Bortles' reliable target again, and you can keep rolling out him with confidence. For the Lions, Matthew Stafford is an obvious play here. Theo Riddick, that running back, though, that's if he plays. He is dealing with a bit of an ankle issue in practice. I think he was limited in practice yesterday. So you want to monitor the injury report for the Lions if you have Theo Riddick on your roster. But as long as he plays, he's a great start. At least he's a high-end RB2 because, again, this defense in Jacksonville is very, very forgiving. I think the receivers are good plays for the Lions in this matchup, Golden Tate and Marvin Jones. I never thought I'd say you could play both guys now, but you can because Golden Tate has finally emerged as a reliable threat in this Lions offense. We always knew Marvin Jones was reliable because he'd been a stud for this first half of the season. Well, now Golden Tate is starting to get more and more targets, more and more touches, more of a rapport with Matthew Stafford, and now he's getting involved as the receiver we thought he was going to be earlier in the year. So now I think you can play him with confidence as well. I'm even going to say that Eric Ebron is a good play at tight end. If you're hurting at tight end, say you don't have Hunter Henry or Antonio Gates this week, or you might not have Gronk because Gronk might not play. In fact, I might not even make the trip this week to San Francisco. So say you just lost Gronk. If Eric Ebron by chance is somewhere out there in your league, pick him up and put him in. And I think Eric, the joke wars give up a lot of fantasy points to tight ends. So Eric Ebron could very well find the end zone this week. And again, the Lions tend to play better at home in the friendly confines of Ford Field than they do on the road. So I think Ebron's a great play here. But I think you can start Blake Bortles in this matchup because, again, garbage time. It counts in fantasy, people. It does count. And he's at least a low-end QB2 or maybe even a desperate bye-week filler because that garbage time. He will have to throw plenty in this game. The Lions' front four is very, number one, stout against the run, and number two, the Joke Wars running back situation is very, very much, again, another timeshare. We don't know who's going to get the bulk of the work, and really neither back is very much elite anyway. So with that being said, Bortles is going to have to throw a lot in this game. So I think he's still going to put up decent fantasy numbers for you as a QB2. So if you're hurting at quarterback or you don't have one of those guys that are on a bye week this week, say if you don't have Simeon or Rivers or Ryan, or even in 2 quarterback leagues, I think Bortles is a really good play. So I mentioned that the only sit, again, is the running backs. Is it going to be Chris Ivory? Is it going to be TJ Yeldon? No, it's going to be both because clearly they're locked in a timeshare. We don't, they're not fully committed to one guy. I've said it on here before, and I will say it again. They have not been fully committed to one guy since Maurice Jones-Drew. That's it. He was their main guy. And after that, it's been a multitude of guys. Remember Toby Gerhart? Remember when we all thought that Toby Gerhart was going to be a starting great running back for Jacksonville? How'd that turn out? Here's the hint. Not very good. So it's a mess. It's really a messy situation. Chris Ivory and TJ Yeldon cancel each other out. They do. They throw up the X. Well, here's Chris Ivory's arm. I want the carries. And then here's TJ Yeldon's arm. No, I want the carries. And then they cancel each other out. So it's like, or here's Chris Ivory like a boat, and then here's TJ Yeldon, a giant iceberg, and so there's just, they cancel each other out. It just doesn't work. So they're nothing more really than desperate RB4 or flex plays. If you're hurting at the running back position, you really can't rely on either guy unless you're really hurting at running back. That's really the big risk you take. Titans at the Colts. Oh boy, this one is going to be fun, and it got a lot more fun because of the emergence of one Marcus Mariota. Oh my gosh, he has been, over these past few weeks, he has been absolutely entertaining to watch. And not just if you're a Titans fan. Obviously, if you're a Titans fan, you love the fact that you're actually competing now in the AFC South. If you're competing at all, you've been in the doldrums in the bottom. You've been pretty much Jacksonville's buddy for years. Sitting there at the bar, you're looking up there at Houston and Indianapolis, and you're like, oh, hey, Jacksonville, hi. Did you dive in the pool again at the stadium and just drown yourself trying not to watch the game? Yeah. What about you? Yeah. I'm trying not to rip T-Rex tail off over here. It's been pretty pathetic. Well, here's to another pathetic season. Yeah. That's been Tennessee and Jacksonville for years at the bottom of the AFC South. But Tennessee has emerged as a legitimate threat. Yes, I said threat to win the AFC South, and I never thought that I would say that. This is like the most fun Tennessee team to watch since the 2000 team that fell 1 yard short of winning the Super Bowl. It's true. It's honestly true. And Marcus Mariota has just been a stud in reality and fantasy over these past few weeks. And this makes this game, this showdown between these two teams who are trying to compete with Houston for first place in the division, all the more fun and entertaining. We know the Colts have playmakers. We know that. We know they're more talented than their 4-5 record indicates. But recently, the Titans look a lot better than their 5-5 record indicates. So this is, again, if anything, this has the potential to be a real jackpot game for a lot of guys. But there are also some guys that really are not going to be good plays in this game. So it's kind of like, you want to play in this matchup the guys that you normally rely on, but for the most part, there are also some guys you don't want to rely on because they've been way too inconsistent. So let's review this game. For the obvious guys for the Colts are obviously kind of their big three. Usually it's kind of now become a big four. I'm talking, of course, about Andrew Luck at quarterback and Frank Gore at running back, who's been Mr. Reliable this year, and T.Y. Hilton at wide receiver. But Dante Moncrief, and again, I have the tough call of whether to play Thomas or Moncrief at the three this week because they both have good matchups, and I'm playing Thomas only because I want to get a good start. But if you normally rely on Moncrief to be a wide receiver 2 or 3 for you and you don't have any other better options, I'd play Dante Moncrief because he just seems to have this nice rapport with Andrew Luck. He has scored at least one touchdown every game he's appeared in this season. He knows how to put up double-digit fantasy numbers. Whoa. And then NFL Network just froze. And it went silent real fast. There we go. Fixed itself. But you know what you're going to get from Moncrief. He's usually a touchdown scoring guy, but he also gets a lot of targets from Andrew Luck. So with that being said, I think you can still rely on him as long as you don't have better options in front of him. I think you can still play Dante Moncrief and put up a decent fantasy day. As for the Titans, again, Marcus Mariota has now become an obvious start. And again, I never thought I would say that, but my gosh, what he has done to opposing defenses, especially the Packers last week, has been nothing short of phenomenal. He is definitely putting up great numbers, and he now is an obvious start going forward. Same, of course, with running back DeMarco Murray. As long as he plays, that toe is still becoming a bit of a concern, and it's limiting him in practice a bit, but it looks like he's going to be full go again this week, so keep rolling out DeMarco Murray. And Delaney Walker, again, one of the better tight ends in the NFL. As for the sits, from the Colts' perspective, again, I have to keep bringing up his name because some people try to get cute and use him, and again, that's Philip Dorsett. In case you didn't know, he's a fantasy afterthought. And again, with Moncrief healthy, he's fallen back as being the desperate number 3 guy. He's it's also becoming closer to being a real afterthought because of how disappointing he's been. So I don't recommend him. And the Colts tight ends, it was fun while it lasted, but Jack Doyle lately has not really scored his touchdowns as often as he used to. And again, maybe that has to do with something with Moncrief being healthy again. But, with that being the case, you just can't rely on Jack Doyle right now. And Dwayne Allen, as we all know, A, doesn't score touchdowns, and B, doesn't stay healthy. So what more can you say on that? And then the other sit in this game is the Titans wide receivers. Oh boy, we had this conversation. This is like deja vu. We had this whole debate a couple years ago. And even though the Titans are getting more fun at wide receiver, or more fun in the offense, they still don't have a true number 1. Remember a few years ago we were talking about, 1 week it's Kendall Wright, and then it's Nate Washington, and then it's this guy, and then it's this guy we don't know, and then we don't know. And we're right back to that again. Oh my gosh, Tennessee, 1 week it's Tajay Sharp. The next it's Kendall Wright now emerging. And now it's Rashard Matthews who's emerging. Is one of them going to stick? You keep throwing the little – remember when you were growing up, you had the little Velcro balls, and you put the big felt dartboard on the wall, and you would just chuck the little balls at the dartboard and hope that one would stick. And sometimes they did, and sometimes they didn't, but you just kept throwing it, or you get mad and you peel the Velcro off, and then you just throw it at the wall, and you're just throwing balls to the wall, and then it won't stick. You remember that? That's kind of what the Tennessee wide receiver situation is like. Or it's like Starbucks. It's like Starbucks. Come on down, everybody, to Titans Starbucks for your flavor of the week. Come on down and get your flavor. Available in Grande, Venti, or holy crap, who's our number 1 wide receiver? We don't know because we get new employees. We hire them and we fire them and we hire them and we fire them. We get them every day, and they just keep on changing what they put in their cups. Have you seen that? They keep changing it. Then we have this flavor, and then he fires that guy for doing something stupid, and then we put in the new guy, and he says, "Let me go experiment with this flavor." And we just do this and shake it up real nice. And people just drink it up like and they stand in line, 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 for the next thing, and they don't know what it's going to be, but that's just what it is, because they just can't get enough of it. I can't get enough of Titans Starbucks. Do you understand how frustrating that is? I mean, it's a funny visual, but do you understand how painful it is for fantasy owners? I mean, Starbucks is great on its own, number 1. Starbucks is awesome, but not from a Tennessee perspective, not from a Titans perspective. You don't want to go to Titans Starbucks because it's a different thing. It's a different thing all the time. So avoid Titans wide receivers. No, there's no true number 1 here, and just no one you can consistently rely on. So don't trust it. Just don't trust it. Ball to the wall, dartboard. Titans Starbucks. All right, moving on to Bills at Bengals. These are 2 kind of struggling teams. The 1 o'clock game, the 4-5 Bills going up against the 3-5-1 Bengals. Both teams needing a win desperately. There's a couple guys in this matchup I like. Again, not really a whole lot not to like in this matchup, but only because, again, either a tough matchup or inconsistency. But for the Bills, you like their main two offensive weapons. That's Tyrod Taylor at quarterback. Even though the Bengals defense has been shown at times this season to show some toughness, Tyrod Taylor still has that rushing ability, and he can kill you with that. So Tyrod Taylor, I think, still is an upside QB2 and startable in at least two quarterback leagues. Or again, if you're hurting with the bye weeks, I think Tyrod Taylor is certainly usable. So I think you can use him. And, of course, LaShawn McCoy, you got to keep playing him at running back. He's pretty much usually matchup proof, so I think you keep going with him. For the Bengals, I think both their running backs this week are obvious plays. Obviously, I like Gio Bernard better. I've said that on here how much I praise Gio Bernard, and not just because he's a North Carolina alum, #GoHeels, but I still think he's the better back because, again, he's that dual threat. He can not only hurt you on the ground, but he can hurt you in the passing game. And I think that's the big reason why I like him. Where Jeremy Hill, again, is so inconsistent. He's more of that north-south guy. Gio Bernard can do things east and west as well. So, but I like both backs in this game because I think they're going to both have opportunities to find holes in this Bills defense. So I like both guys to match up. A.J. Green, obviously, a wide receiver. He's a set-it-and-forget-it guy. You know that. And, of course, Tyler Eifert, now that he's healthy at tight end, is back to being that elite weapon that Andy Dalton needs in this offense. When A.J. Green is getting double covered, triple covered, or when Brandon LaFell down without the football keeps dropping passes or what have you, and disappears from the offense, Eifert steps up and makes the big plays. I should know this because last year I had Tyler Eifert on my team, and all he did was score 13 touchdowns and led tight ends in that department. So, now that he's healthy again, he's back to being that strong option for Andy Dalton. So you keep putting him in your lineup as well. And I have to face him this week. So lucky me. I just have to hope that Martellus Bennett breaks out for New England now that with Gronk out. So, yay, I get to face my team MVP from last season. Yay. I hope he doesn't kill me, I hope he doesn't do something like that, or what, any ways of killing, what have you, many ways. As for the sits, I will say, though, Andy Dalton, even though he's at home, I don't like the Red Rifle in this matchup. I don't, because Rex Ryan with that defense, they try to take away, the quarterbacks and the big weapons there. And even though the Bills secondary won't have anybody to cover A.J. Green, really, I think Dalton's going to have a rougher day than people think. He's dealing with a bit of a shoulder issue. He is listed as questionable, which means he's probably still going to play. But I think, with that in mind, Buffalo's really going to try to get that pass rush on him. I just don't like this matchup. I can only rate him as a low-end, risky QB2 this week just because of this tough matchup. And the Bills wide receivers, again, I mentioned it on here, without Sammy Watkins, they're not the same. Robert Woods is banged up. He's dealing with a foot issue. Marquise Goodwin's 2 hit or miss. No thanks. Avoid that entirely. Buccaneers are at the Chiefs this week for a 1 o'clock game, and the scary thing is for Tampa Bay is the Chiefs' defense is getting stronger and stronger every day. I know, long way to go for a Chicago joke. No, wait, that's feeling stronger every day. I'm sorry, but you kind of get it. You get the memo. They are, because they're starting to get healthier on the defensive side of the ball. Eric Berry's fully back. This week they might get Justin Houston, their big-time pass rusher, back this week. So the Chiefs' defense is getting scarier and scarier by the week, and not to mention the offense is still just as strong, even though they might not have Jeremy Maclin this week. The guy I mentioned in the last show 2 weeks ago, Tyreek Hill, where the heck did he come from? Where the hill did he come from? Well, he's actually doing his job filling in as doing his best Jeremy Maclin impression, I guess. He is emerging as a pretty top receiving option there for Kansas City in Jeremy Maclin's absence. So I think this game, is not going to be not a good day for Tampa Bay's players. I think Kansas City's players are obviously going to have a field day because Tampa Bay's defense, as we all know, is very forgiving. So in this game, you're going to start a lot of your Chiefs in this game, and you're really not going to start a lot of your Bucks. But there's still a couple guys I think you can still play, even though Barry is probably going to be on Mike Evans. I think Mike to sit. I still think you can't sit Mike Evans. And by the way, speaking of Mike Evans, and you might have also heard this story, Mike Evans has spoke out and said that he will not sit for the national anthem anymore. He did so last week shortly after Veterans Weekend, and that drew a lot of controversy. He sat during the anthem because of the recent presidential election of Donald Trump, and he felt that that was really, he said it was, he even came out the same and said it was nothing against the military, it was nothing against all that, it was just the fact that there were issues that he felt was with the country. His emotions were very much messed up at the time, the fact that Trump got elected. So because of that, he sat on the bench during the anthem. But then he came out a couple days ago and said, I apologize for anyone that I offended. It was nothing. It was, my emotions got caught up in it. I will find other ways to speak, with the issues that plague this country, with the minority issues, with all of that. So therefore, I will stand with my teammates from here on out. So, my take on that is that at least Evans understands that, there are other ways to, and I've said this ever since the whole Kaepernick thing started. There are other ways that you can, not only show your displeasure with the issues that are going on in our world, which I will agree there are issues, but there are not only other ways you can show it, but there are also other ways you can support those groups and support the, those causes and show your support for the officers and the military at the same time. So yes, you can be unhappy with the issues going on and create a discussion and share that message, yes, but do it in a different way while at the same time showing support for the people that work hard every day to protect the country. So that's really been the way I've seen it all along. So I applaud Mike Evans for coming out and then explaining himself and then explaining, hey, I'm going to do it a different way. I will now stay with my teammates. Yes, I understand the country, my emotions, it was messed up, but I'm still going to, be with my teammates. So good on you, Mike Evans. I appreciate that. And in this matchup, I still think, even though Eric Berry's probably going to be on him all day, I still like him in the matchup. And I'm going to say the same for Cameron Bray. And I know I've read a lot of things out there that have said, oh, the Chiefs are so good against tight ends. Why would you play Cameron Bray? Well, Cameron, tight end this year has been a very fickle position, and it's very, very hard to find a consistent elite tight end option unless you have one of the elite four that I mentioned, which is like Gronk. We're not going to have Gronk this week. Olsen, Walker, and now maybe you add Eifert to that list, but and Kelsey. So now there's at least five. So more of an elite five anyway. So outside of those core guys, there really hasn't been a lot to celebrate at tight end this year. So, but Bray has looked really, really well the past couple weeks. He's been a scoring machine. He's scored, I think, in back-to-back weeks, either back-to-back or 3 straight weeks. And he just seems to have a knack for finding the end zone. And now that Vincent Jackson is officially done for the year with IR with a knee issue, Bray's going to take advantage of that, and maybe Adam Humphries gets more involved. Maybe he doesn't. But Bray is becoming a big beneficiary of all this. So I still think, even though the matchup is tough, I think he's still going to get a lot of targets and still put up decent yardage. Even if he didn't find the end zone, I think he still puts up some decent yardage. If you're looking for a tight end that puts up 5-6 points on a consistent basis, even when they don't find the end zone, Cameron Brate's your guy. So I still think he's an okay play. For the Chiefs, your starting guys for sure are Spencer Ware, running back, obviously, now the true number one guy there. Kendrick West now is an afterthought. And, of course, Charles now is officially on IR, done for the year. So Ware is your guy. And I mentioned Travis Kelsey. Again, a set it and forget it guy at tight end. Kelsey's reliable. You keep rolling out him. Alex Smith, once again, this is a matchup for Alex Smith to exploit at quarterback. Tampa's defense is just straight up junk. It's junk. I mean, it's complete and utter junk. And, and it's practically, if I could pull a big dumpster in this room, it'd be this, a dumpster. This is Tampa's defense, a dumpster, and then I throw a match in it, because that's Tampa's defense. It's a literal dumpster fire. So Smith is a great bye-week filler and certainly a high-end QB2 with upside. I will say this week, though, and again, usually I'm leery on guys that are coming back from injuries. But Doug Martin, the Bucs need Doug Martin back in the worst way. They have trotted out player after player after player, trying to get some semblance of a running game with Doug Martin now with that hamstring issue, whether it's Jacquizz Rodgers or Anton Smith or Peyton Barber or Mike James. And neither of them able to fill well. Maybe the best before was Rodgers. At least Rodgers is a very speedy running back, but then he hurt his foot, so now he's out. And then Anton Smith got hurt, and now I think he's out. And Barber really didn't do much of anything. And James was just kind of a what the heck flex back. Really, none of them have the explosiveness and the sheer ability that Doug Martin has. So the Bucs needed Doug Martin back in the worst way. But he's been full go at practice this week. Even though the matchup is tough and it's his first game back, the Bucs have to lean on him. He's at least a low-end RB2 for now, but the upside is there. If you stashed Doug Martin and you held on, or if you held on to him while he was out, or someone dropped him and you picked him up as a stash, put Doug Martin back in there. I think he's going to at least have a decent day because the Bucs know they have to lean on him in this matchup, considering that tough Chiefs secondary. And again, I mentioned Tyreek Hill. If Jeremy Maclin remains sidelined with that groin injury, which all signs are pointing to that he probably will, if that's the case, Hill's going to be the one to get most of those targets. I think he's a nice wide receiver 3, but certainly the upside is there for him to be a potential 2 if he keeps getting those targets from Alex Smith. The only sit then in this game that's really relevant is Jameis Winston. You cannot play Jameis Winston in this matchup. It's just too tough. He's played well of late, but again, he's been taking advantage of these really good matchups. But you just can't afford to start him against an improving defense that just continues to get healthier and healthier. It's just too much risk. With Barry there, with Marcus Peters there in the secondary, it's just too much of a risk. So you cannot play Jameis Winston this week. Bears are at the Giants. What needs to be said about this game? Well, the big story, of course, in this game is Alshon Jeffrey. If you guys did not hear, a couple days ago, Alshon Jeffrey was suspended by the NFL for 4 games for violating the league's drug policy, the performance-enhancing policy. Apparently, Jeffrey was taking a substance for, I think it was for pain management, I think. But he was taking it, and there was an ingredient in there that was on the NFL's banned list that apparently either Jeffrey was A, they're not aware of, or B, he was aware of it and just wanted to use it to get better. So clearly, but Jeffrey did come out and made an apology to the fans, the NFL, the Bears, everyone. He said he would serve the suspension and work hard to get the trust of the fans back. And that's what you want to hear. You don't want to hear the most of the excuse of these players. I didn't know what was in it, or I didn't take it, or da 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 da. At least Jeffrey was honest. At least he came out and said, yes, what I did was wrong. I will serve my time, and I will try to earn your trust back. That's what you should do as an athlete. So, again, there's been a lot of athletes this week that have done applaudable things. And, Romo, Evans, and Jeffrey. So again, good on you, Alshon. Owning up to your mistake, owning up to it, admitting it, and learning from it and moving on. So, but what does that do now for the Bears from a fantasy perspective? Well, obviously you have Alshon Jeffrey. That definitely is going to hurt your chances moving forward because you usually had a reliable at least wide receiver 1 or 2, and now he's out for 4 games. So who steps up in his place? Well, there really, of course, aren't a lot of great options there. Who it does help is Zach Miller, the Bears tight end, because he, I think, is going to get more targets as a result of this. But also, again, guys like Cameron Meredith, who stepped up nicely when Jeffrey was out with an injury originally. He stepped up and did a nice job, so he's going to get more targets. And Eddie Royal, as long as he's healthy, Eddie Royal is going to get a lot more targets as well. So there are a couple of guys that will step up in Jeffrey's absence, you hope. But the bottom line is that the Bears quarterback is still Jay Cutler. I mean Jay Cutler. How fun is it? Just keep laughing at Jay Cutler. Go ahead. Hey, did you see what happened? Dave, is that you? Yeah, it's me. Give me another one. We just lost Alshon. Oh, Alshon, our only good wide receiver. Can you believe that, man? Oh, this is just terrible. What did he take? The cream, the clear? What did he take? Dave, we don't know. They didn't tell us what he took, okay? They didn't say anything. They didn't tell us. They didn't, we didn't know. We don't know what he took. Oh man. So it's not Ryan Balco. They're not gonna reveal what he took. No, Dave, I don't think they're gonna do that. Oh man. This is terrible, man. We're already 2-7. We're already at the bottom of the division. And even though Minnesota's falling back and Green Bay's falling back, Detroit's actually playing well. I can't believe that. Detroit is far better than we are, man. This is terrible. And now we got to play the Giants on the road. Eli Manning, 2-time Super Bowl winner. Oh, man. This sucks. But you know who else sucks? Who, Dave? Jay Cutler sucks. Do you need me to even say it? I mean, there you go. There are obvious guys in this game. There are a few. There are a few guys that you can play in this game. For the Bears, Jordan Howard. It looks like he is healthy at running back. He did later come out and say originally when he first said that he didn't injure anything, he later came out and said, yeah, he was dealing with a bit of an Achilles issue, but he's been practicing this week, so it looks like he's over that. As long as he's going to get the bulk of the work in the backfield, which it looks like he is, then you play Jordan Howard as you normally would. And again, I mentioned Zach Miller at tight end. Maybe not one of the elite tight ends in the league, but certainly in that second tier that's getting a lot of work. So that was my text message for a minute. I used the same ringtone, NBC. But no, Zach Miller, tight end, is reliable, so you keep rolling out him. For the Giants, Eli Manning has actually been pretty darn good of late and red hot. Plus, this is a matchup he can exploit at home. So I think you keep going with Eli Manning and, of course, Odell Beckham, who has been turning it up of late. I mean, early on in the season, we were all panicking. Well, not myself, but Nate, my co-owner, was. We were all panicking about Odell Beckham. Why do you put so much trust in Odell Beckham? Why do you keep starting Odell Beckham, even though he's not scoring touchdowns? Why do you keep, And I said, dude, don't lose the faith. Keep the faith on Odell Beckham. He's not been terribly bad. He's had one bad game, and that was because Xavier Rhodes was his shadow in Minnesota and had 2 fantasy points. That's the only game he's really been bad, even though he hasn't found the end zone. Don't lose faith on Odell Beckham. Well, look at me. I was right. He scored 5 in 5 of the last 6 weeks. He's finding the end zone again, and Manning knows that he's his reliable target and security blanket. So you keep rolling out Odell Beckham. But the other one that I think is a start, and this might surprise a lot of people, and I never thought I would say this myself. I honestly never thought I would say this myself, because usually I really slam the Giants running backs. I do. But look right here. 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 What does that say? What does that say right there? What does it say right there? You see that there? You see that there? It says start Rashad Jennings. You're probably now looking at me going, what? Let me explain. I never thought I'd see the day when I'd say this either, but here's the thing. The matchup's good. As we know, Chicago's defense sucks. And he's coming off a 100-yard game. And even though most of that was in garbage time, it still counts. So it looks like right now to me that the Giants aren't willing to turn over the backfield to Paul Perkins yet. Perkins is getting more work in the backfield, but they're not ready yet to turn over the full workload to him, or at least eat enough in the Jennings workload where he's no longer a fantasy value commodity. So, he don't look like he's anywhere close. He honestly doesn't. So at least for now, Jennings is at least a very, very fringe RB2. I would use him only if you're desperate at running back, or if you have guys on bye this week. If you're hurting at running back, maybe you put in them and see what happens. But he's still a starting running back in the Giants. And in fantasy, being a starting running back is kind of a big deal. So so you got to at least give him a shot, There are better options, obviously, at RB2 than Jennings, but If you're hurting, what the heck? See what happens. Sits, I mentioned a few already. Cutler, you don't need me to say it. Perkins, nothing but really a desperate flex or a bench stash right now. I think if you can scout Paul Perkins, you can stash him if you have an open roster spot. His time may come, but if Jennings has another big week this week, which is likely, it might not happen this year. But for now, monitor him, scout him if you have a scouting spot, stash him if you got an open roster spot, and see what happens with Jennings. And if he doesn't pan out, then maybe Perkins will get more work. We'll see what happens. And again, I mentioned the Bears wide receivers. Jeffrey getting suspended doesn't help there. Royal is still banged up. Royal may not play this week. He's been dealing with a toe issue. He may not play. And Meredith, while Meredith will be the one to step up in Jeffrey's absence, he's been very hit or miss. And, of course, Cutler's still the quarterback. So it's risky. If you trust any Bears wide receiver, it's Meredith and maybe as a what-the-heck wide receiver 3 or 4. But outside of that, I can't trust any Bears wide receivers this week. Cardinals are at the Vikings. This is really a defining game, I think, for Minnesota more than anything because, oh boy, the Vikings collapse has just been absolutely stunning to watch. I mean, really. We were all praising Minnesota at the start of the season, 5-0 start, dominating the North because Green Bay was struggling and Detroit was struggling, and, of course, Chicago sucked. And so we were and Minnesota was far and away the best team in the NFC North. And now here we are 4 weeks later, and now they're in a first-place tie with Detroit. It's like, oh my gosh, what happened? Well, here's what happened. Sam Bradford has gone from being somewhat functional to, once again, meh. The running game is non-existent with Adrian Peterson being out. Stephon Diggs is really the only reliable Vikings wide receiver, which the lockdown receiver is going to have a big day. Kyle Rudolph occasionally finds the end zone, but doesn't happen very often. And that defense that we all thought was so impenetrable at first is starting to really show a lot of cracks in the masonry, if you will, and the holes are starting to open. And, oh my gosh, don't let the wall fall down on you. It's like that John Mellencamp song, the walls come crumbling down. Well, that's kind of what's happening with the Vikings defense. Oh, by the way, your best corner, Xavier Rhodes, is still in the concussion protocol and might not play this week. Yeah, great stuff. This is a statement game for Minnesota. If Minnesota loses this game against a very talented Arizona team and drops to 5-5, it could really be panic time. They've already had to change their offensive coordinator, and really that really hasn't shown all that much difference. You got a new coordinator, yay. I mean, it really hasn't shown all that much difference. So it's just like a complete contrast again. And maybe in the end, the defense was the big reason why Minnesota was 5-0. I mean, the offense did just enough to win games, and then Peterson got hurt, and then Rhodes gets hurt, and the offense now struggles. And here's a completely different team in the mirror. You go through the mirror, and it's kind of like a beautiful creature. Look at this beautiful creature here at 5-0, the Minnesota Vikings. Look at them. Oh, they're so gorgeous. They're so awesome. That defense is so strong and so talented. And here they are. Look at them play. Their offense doing just enough to win games. Might not be pretty every week, but oh my gosh, that defense. Isn't it gorgeous to watch? 4 weeks later. Is an ugly fly in your screen? Or bees? You're covered in bees. Covered in bees. You're covered in bees. That's kind of what it's become. Shout out Eddie Izzard. That's kind of what it's become. It went from being this beautiful thing to covered in bees. I mean, it's just awful to watch. You're covered in bees. And oh, by the way, you just got rid of your kicker, Blair Walsh, Mr. Oh my gosh, he missed that field goal against Seattle in the playoffs. He's gone now because he missed 4 extra points. 4 of them. And now your kicker is Kai Forbath. Yay. This game for Minnesota, to say the least, even through all that imagery, is critical. It is critical for Minnesota. Arizona just needs a spark to keep up with Seattle in the division because Seattle is looking like Seattle again. They just went to New England and beat New England and got revenge for the call. So it's this game is just as big for Arizona, but I think it's more important for Minnesota. So really, there's only, this matchup, to me, there's only really a few guys that I like. I don't think this game is going to be very pretty, to say the least, because these traditionally are both strong defenses, but at the same time, again, with the Vikings defense being so leaky of late, I think you can still play some Cardinals guys in this matchup. David Johnson at running back is still a fine play. In practice, he's pretty much become matchup proof. I think you can still play David Johnson. You play Larry Fitzgerald as long as he plays. He was limited on Wednesday, but he did put in a full practice today. And even though he's got a brace on his knee, he still was full go. So it looks like all indications are he's going to play. And with Xavier Rhodes potentially not playing because of him being in the concussion protocol, I think you can still roll out Larry Fitzgerald. So as long as he plays, you play Larry Fitzgerald. We play Larry Fitzgerald because he's on my team, and I really am glad for that. But Carson Palmer, I think, is still a decent start. Again, that Vikings defense is not as scary as it once was, and it could open things up in the receiving core with Rhodes being out. So he's not a surefire thing, but he's not a sit either. I think he's at least a high-end QB2 and does have some good fantasy value this week for you. But you're sitting all, I say all, the Viking skill players. I cannot recommend one Viking player in this matchup because the Cardinals' defense is still strong. And especially with that secondary, with the pass rush, it's going to eat Minnesota alive. Minnesota right now barely has an offense at all. What little offense they have, it's not going to show against Arizona. Arizona's going to do everything they can to just completely shut it down. So remember that when I pulled out that dumpster fire that was Tampa's defense? Let's keep that going for Minnesota's offense and turn it up times 10,000, okay? Or 9,000 or whatever. Put a bunch of matches in there and just set it a flambe because that's Minnesota's offense. Do you really feel lucky starting any of these guys against the Cardinals? Do you? Bradford? Forget it. The running game with Jerick McKinnon and Matt Asiata, non-existent. Diggs? Hi, Patrick Peterson. You're my shadow the whole game. Forget about it. Laquan Treadwell? First game back from a hamstring. Don't do it. Adam Thielen? Hi, Tyrann Mathieu. You're my shadow the whole game. No. Kyle Rudolph? Touchdown dependent. No. You get it. You should get it by now. Don't start Vikings in this matchup. Don't do it, okay? Don't do it. Or I'll send you to Titan Starbucks, okay? Because, because if you want to win this week, don't do it because they're not going to put up good numbers. They're not. I'm making Titan Starbucks sound like purgatory, aren't I? You're also not starting, though, the other Cardinals receivers not named Larry Fitzgerald, okay? You're not starting these guys either. Michael Floyd is too hit or miss, mostly miss. J.J. Nelson, he's kind of crashed back to earth. Jaron Brown is out for the year, even though he just got a big contract extension. Cha-ching! And John Brown has injury issues. So if you're pressed to try one, I think you only try Michael Floyd as a wide receiver 4, but really that's the best out of this week bunch. That's really all I can give you here. Speaking of purgatory, and speaking of games that will just gouge your eyes out, normally we have the game of the week, WEAK, okay? This one, though, is the unwatchable gouge your eyes out game of the week. This one is going to be terrible. Okay? Last week, that was Rams-Jets. Did any of you watch that 9-6 slogfest? I didn't. So I felt really good about myself. This week, it's Dolphins-Rams. Think that game's going to be any better? I don't. And by the way, I will say, apparently whatever I said about Miami woke them up, because as of now, I will no longer call them the Lolfins. They were 1-4 at the time I said that. Since then, they've won 4 straight. I don't know how, but they have. So I will no longer. So they've graduated from that. I no longer call them that. But they might revert back to that in this game, because this game is just going to be nails on a chalkboard inducing. I mean, that's what this game is going to be. It's going to be so bad. It's going to be so bad. That Rams-Jets game made your brain hurt. It might have turned your brain into putty, okay? It was so bad. The Rams are so bad. And now, the Rams now are so desperate not to be bad anymore. It was bad enough that Case Keenum was their quarterback, and they had to rely heavily on Todd Gurley, that now they're finally turning the offense over to Jared Goff. They're finally going to play Jared Goff. You remember the number 1 draft pick, Jared Goff? You remember him? It's kind of like, where's Waldo? We haven't seen him all year this year. Where the heck is Jared Goff? Well, he's finally going to play. He's finally going to see an NFL field on Sunday. He was sitting all year thinking, Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott are playing so much better than me, and I got more money. But now here we go. Jared Goff finally gets to see the field. But is that really a good thing? Is that really a good thing? Because you've got this terrible offense to try to run now. And oh, by the way, you're playing a Miami team whose DST has been really strong the last few weeks. And I'm doing a dance about that because 19 fantasy points in a CBS league last week, which led me to a win and kicking more butts. I mean, this game is going to be ugly, except for the DSTs. You can play the DSTs in this game. You can play the Dolphins DST. You can play the Rams DST because they're probably going to kick butts. But other than that, and maybe outside of the running backs, because at least the running backs are going to get a lot of work in this game with Jay Ajayi and Todd Gurley. That's it. That's my only obvious starts in this game. Jay Ajayi and Todd Gurley. That's it. That's it. Because at least they're going to get touches. At least they're going to get work. But the passing game with Ryan Tannehill and Jared Goff, it's going to be painful. You're gonna think, where's the Tylenol? Where's the pain relieving? Don't watch this game. Don't watch this game unless you're a diehard Dolphins or Rams fan. Don't watch that game, and don't play fantasy guys in this game unless you have a Ajayi or Gurley. Everyone else. Both quarterbacks, you're not playing them in this game. You're not playing Ryan Tannehill. You're not playing Jared Goff in his first game. No, don't do it. You're not playing the receivers. If you're sitting the quarterbacks, you're sitting the receivers. You're not playing Jarvis Landry or Devontae Parker or a myriad of Rams receivers, Brian Quick or Kenny Britt or Tavon Austin. You're not doing it, or I will take you to Titans Starbucks. Do you not understand that you're not playing these guys this week? Don't do it. Moving on. Let's get away from that ugly game. Let's talk about Patriots at Niners. Even though that's really not all that much better because it's probably going to be a dominating win by the Patriots anyway. But the big story again in this game is, oh my gosh, no Gronk. And it's looking more and more like it's going to happen because Gronkowski, again, did not practice. He has not practiced the last 2 days. You might be wondering why, you ask, if you don't really follow Patriots the NFL that much. Well, the reason being is because in that Seattle game, he took a big hit from Earl Thomas, and actually it led to a punctured lung. A punctured lung. That is not a pretty injury. I've never had before, and I wish I hope I never do, but it doesn't sound like a very pretty injury. So it's been so bad that Gronk has not practiced the last 2 days, including today. And all reports are saying he's not even going to be on the plane to San Francisco. So in all likelihood, it's going to be Martellus Bennett starting this week. And actually, he was coming off a pretty impressive game against Seattle. Many thought that Bennett had disappeared from the offense, being a tight end one because Gronk was playing so well. Well, Bennett actually got more targets and did more with them against Seattle. So Bennett is going to be a tight end one this week for sure, and I picked him up off waivers in my league and going to play him this week, and probably going to be a great play for the rest of the season because even when Gronk's healthy, the Patriots like to use 2 tight end sets. They don't. It's not just Gronk alone. Yes, Gronk might find the end zone a lot, but Bennett can also make big plays as well. So, and of course, anyone on the Patriots offense you can find off waivers is usually a gem. So Bennett is going to be an immediate tight end one play this week and going forward for the rest of the season, depending on how long this injury lingers with Gronk. It's reported he's only going to miss this one game, but who knows? Because the Patriots are very hush-hush about their injuries. But, who knows what's going to happen. But at least for this week, an immediate tight end one. Martellus Bennett is the start of the week in this game because the Niners defense is horrendous. Remember, again, that dumpster fire. Here's the Niners defense. It's really, really bad. So, and again, Bennett coming off that huge game. So you play him. Your obvious guys for the Patriots is, again, their main 3. Tom Brady at quarterback, LeGarrette Blount at running back, and Julian Edelman at wide receiver. Now, he is dealing, of course, with a bit of a foot issue, as he has most of the season, but all signs again are pointing to Edelman playing this week. So you keep putting him out there. The only Niner I would trust is Carlos Hyde at running back. That's really what their offense revolves around. And many of you might say, well, what about Colin Kaepernick? What about Colin Kaepernick? I mean, you do know this is the Patriots are playing, right? I mean, I understand Colin Kaepernick has done pretty impressive things since he got the start from Blaine god-awful Gabbert, in week 6. I understand that Kaepernick has done some really nice things and put up some nice numbers. I get that. But this is the Patriots we're talking about. And Bill Belichick usually finds a way to shut down the Niners' top weapon. And while that might be Carlos Hyde, I think he realizes that Colin Kaepernick can be a pretty good weapon too. So, Belichick just finds a way to shut that down. So really for me, Cap is really I don't even know if I can name him as a QB2 this week. He's just a very, very risky play. Maybe a desperate play in 2 quarterback leagues, but not a recommended play in other standard leagues for me this week. I don't really see that as a viable option. And the other really only guy that I can sit is Dion Lewis, and only because, this might be his first game back coming off his knee injury. And besides, we don't yet really know what his role is going to be behind LeGarrette. We know LeGarrette Blount is probably still going to be the workhorse back. But, what is Lewis going to get work on passing downs? Is he going to split that role with James White, who's still in the mix? We don't know yet. And again, the Patriots are very hush about their depth chart. So, we don't know. So I wouldn't trust Dion Lewis yet. If you stashed him, great. He might carve out a role later on down the line and might even win some teams a fantasy championship. And that's all well and good. But until then, you can't trust him yet. Eagles at Seahawks. This game pretty much is pretty simple. Start your Seahawks and sit your Eagles. I mean, it's the Seahawks at home, 12th man, rookie quarterback in a tough environment. You probably know what's going to happen. And the Eagles have just been a head scratcher of late, especially again in the running back department. Doug Peterson apparently hates fantasy football because he will say one thing and then the opposite will happen. A couple weeks ago, Ryan Matthews is our starting running back. Game day, Darren Sproles gets most of the work and scores the touchdowns. Then comes out next week and says, Darren Sproles is our number 1 running back. Game day, Darren Sproles gets relegated to his backup role. Ryan Matthews scores 2 touchdowns at the goal line. You really hate us, don't you, Doug? You hate us, Doug. You hate fantasy football. It's clear. So, Seahawks, start Russell Wilson at quarterback. Start Doug Baldwin at wide receiver. Start Jimmy Graham at tight end. But your start of the week in this game is C.J. Prosise, the running back. Yes, the running back out of Notre Dame. Thomas Rawls is coming back this week. He's going to be eased back into action. You don't want to really trust Thomas Rawls yet until we see again what his role is going to be. Now that CJ Prosise has kind of taken on the lead back role, and Kristen Michael, the team got rid of Kristen Michael, who had been starting for most of the year and putting up pretty good points for his fantasy owners. But and normally was an obvious start. But Kristen Michael, he's gone. He's now in Green Bay. He's now a Packer afterthought, because he's going to get lost in that running back shuffle. With James Starks and Ty Montgomery? He's going to get lost in that shuffle probably. So he really didn't land in a better situation than he was in Seattle, quite frankly. So for now, Prosise will probably get the bulk of the work and is a nice RB2, but certainly the RB1 upside is there because, again, they're going to ease Rawls back into action. So wait and see what his role is first until you can really trust Thomas Rawls. You're sitting, well, pretty much the rest of the Eagles. You're sitting them. You're not playing Carson Wentz against the Legion of Boom. And Wentz, for the most part, has looked like a rookie most of the season anyway, so you're not going to start him there. Again, I mentioned the Eagles running backs. Another running back headache. Where's the Tylenol? Another one. So many running back headaches are out there. It's really ridiculous. You can't trust Ryan Matthews or Darren Sproles as anything more than really what the heck flex plays at this point, because you don't know which one's going to get more work. You don't know. And the wide receivers, really the only Eagle wide receiver you can trust really for fantasy purposes is Jordan Matthews. But you're not even going to start him against the Legion of Boom, because who's to say Sherman won't be on him? Who's to say Earl Thomas might be on him? Chancellor, what have you. So you can't trust any of those guys against the Legion of Boom. Sunday night game, Packers at Washington. A lot of guys to like in this matchup. There's really, again, only a few guys I don't like in this game. This game could be an entertaining one to watch as well, especially considering what Tennessee just did to that pitiful Packers defense. This game could be a shootout as well. Your obvious guys for the Packers are still going to play Aaron Rodgers at quarterback because, it's Aaron Rodgers. But plus Washington's defense is quite forgiving, except for the pass rush. But their secondary is forgiving outside of Josh Norman. Jordy Nelson, I think you can still play him. Even though Norman will be on him, I still think Jordy has a decent day. I think he's still going to put up enough numbers to be relevant. He's not going to get shut down completely. So I think you can play him. And Devontae Adams has really broken out of late, that now he's become an obvious start. He's become a target machine and is doing more with it than he did, the past couple of years. So I think now on Devontae Adams is at least a strong wide receiver 3, but certainly with wide receiver 2 upside. For Washington, Jamison Crowder is now an obvious start. As long as Deshaun Jackson is out, and it's looking more and more like that's going to be the case again this week with that shoulder issue. We want to monitor that, of course. But Jamison Crowder is getting a lot of work and scoring touchdowns as well, so you keep playing him. Pierre Garçon, I think, is a good play in PPR leagues only. Doesn't really do much with his targets, but those receptions will help him. So you play Garçon in PPR, and of course Jordan Reed, again, one of the more valuable tight ends in the NFL as well. But I also like the Washington combo at quarterback and running back. Kirk Cousins, of course. Green Bay's defense is falling apart. We've seen it. It turned Marcus Mariota now into a stud. So Cousins is a great bye-week filler in this game, and certainly a low-end QB1 for this plus matchup. And Rob Kelly at running back. Apparently, Rob Kelly has corralled the lead back job and stole it from Matt Jones. So he's a nice, I think, high-end RB2 and a good bye-week filler if he's still out there in your league. And then for sit guys, James Starks at running back for the Packers. Washington's front four is pretty stout, and really I can only recommend Starks as kind of a dart throw RB3 or a desperate bye-week filler option. And then, and again, with Michael in there now, what's his role going to be? We'll see what that happens in due time. And Randall Cobb, the hamstring apparently is still an issue because Cobb has been limited in practice these past couple days. He's becoming a bit hard to trust, even though he's been on the field for a lot of snaps. He's a very, very risky wide receiver 3 at best, especially with Adams' emergence. And then finally, the Monday game in Mexico City, Monday night at 8:30, Texans-Raiders. This is my game of the week, WEEK, because I think there's a lot of potential for this game to really, really put up some really good numbers for a lot of guys. Your obvious starts in this game for the Texans is DeAndre Hopkins at wide receiver. For the Raiders, it's Derek Carr at quarterback, Latavius Murray at running back, and the 2 wideouts, Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree. You're also starting Lamar Miller, obviously, for the Texans at running back. No need to panic yet over the shoulder issue. Alfred Blue probably won't play this week, so that means Akeem Hunt is starting. The Purdue grad is going to start to get a little bit more involved. Bill O'Brien has said that, but not enough, I think, of a cutting touch issue that is going to affect Miller. Start him with confidence as an RB1. And Will Fuller, if he plays, the knee is giving him a bit of an issue, but as long as he plays, he's a wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside. As for the sits, Brock Osweiler, the matchup here with the Raiders is great because, as we know, the Raiders' pass defense is very terrible, but Brock Osweiler just can't be trusted right now for fantasy purposes. He's a very, very risky QB2/3 at best. And CJ Fedorowicz at tight end. I was high on him for a while, and he has been targeted a lot lately, but he had a real clunker last week, only 2 fantasy points, and he got vultured in touchdowns by 2 backup tight ends, like Ryan Griffin and like some Steven guy. I don't even know who he was. So that worries me. He's more of a risky tight end too right now. You just can't trust him. All right, guys, that is it. The Sunday night game here is getting ready to start. Or Sunday night game. What night am I on? Thursday night game with the Saints and the Panthers is getting ready to start. The color rushes, by the way, look great tonight. The Panthers. I love the Panthers in those light blues. Again, kind of like the Titans light blues. Those are awesome. The Saints, I think, are in all white. So good luck this week in Week 11. Thank you guys so much again for being understanding about Week 10. If I don't put up a video in Week 12, you guys will be the first to know, whether it's on my Facebook or my Twitter. Check me out there. Again, if you have any comments, anything, dilemmas, please post in the comments below. Feel free to do that. Good luck this week in Week 11. And again, we'll let you know on Week 12 status. Again, for the Fantasy Football Stock Report for your league, your team, your game, your home, Chris Fearson, good night and good luck.